Our world is created by creatives. Look around you. All the luxuries that we enjoy in today's world came from the head of a creative person. So, how do we lead a creative life then? Today's podcast might help you. Our guest is Dr. Russya Connor. She is also called the creative philosopher by many because she set a life by example. On this episode, we talked about a lot of subjects on how to lead a creative life and the struggles a person might face when they start their creative journey, and how to tackle the problems a person faces on the inside and from the outside world. If you are a creative person or a wannabe creative person and want to understand what the life of a creative is and how to tackle the issues when you set out on such a journey, this episode is for you. Enjoy the Seeker's Mind Talks. The creative philosopher. That's an odd name.
That is an odd
Let's
name.
start
And
there.
I start there. So I got that actually. It didn't come from me. I got it from through other people because I was so maybe to backpedal a little bit to give it a context. My first work was being an actor and a dancer and a performer. So that was the first part of my life. So a very playful, you're constantly playing with being someone else, life. And then I moved, as life goes, to Australia and hit that age as a female where it becomes really difficult to have enough work to have a life. So I was sitting there and putting, I need to do something else, something else. And then I studied dramatherapy. And so in
Mhm.
this way I became a psychotherapist. So I had these two parts of myself. And then after a while I was working as a therapist, I got a little bit bored. So then I thought, oh, I should do a PhD because that I always wanted to do that. And so it's kind of these various things. So I literally do. I am a philosopher in that sense, and but I'm always kind of
Mhm.
creating or tinkering and doing things. And so when I said to a friend of mine, I just sometimes, who do I say what I do? And I do different things, but for me they're all the same. And they had a laugh and they said, you know what? Let's call you the creative philosopher from now on. And that kind of stuck. And then I thought, well, why not just use it then? So I came to it a bit by an accident.
Do you think there is a commonality in people who likes philosophy, or who are directed to that sort of thinking?
I think when you want to think about things and when you ponder things and when you ask the big existential questions in life, where do we come from? Why do we do things we do? How do we come into being? That's always that's the deep thinking, and I do believe we as humans we want this. We want to find out. Yes, and
Mhm.
anyone who's interested in philosophy or ask questions, usually in my experience, has sat there and pondered their own life or pondered their own death or thought, why is the world that way or not the other way? So yeah, I do think we have a
Mhm.
common trait. Curiosity, maybe.
Like, what gets me surprised is why some people don't think of our existence at all, right? Because we are doing everything for our life. We built stories off of it, and it's an odd thought why people don't ponder into the realms of philosophy and that sort of thinking. Anyways, yeah, you've led a creative life most of your life, and it is a constant challenge for every person to lead that creative life, that creative profession. What first of all, what gave you that drive to lead a sort of creative life? And second question is, a creative life is hard. It's
Mm.
like, so my view on creativity is like, you don't know, there's no safety at it. It's like looking into the abyss or infinity. You don't know where it might take you, where a creative path might take you. You just have to take that leap of faith every now and then, if not every day. Correct me if I'm wrong on this, but how does one lead that creative path, and how does one find that perseverance or strength to
Hmm.
go about living a life of creativity?
Maybe let me start. backwards with your second question. You mentioned the word, it's like staring into an abyss, and that there here, I don't want to project, but the fear of something, and I think after a while, when you think about it, it's like it's more there's always possibilities. So for me, being creative in a way is giving me more resilience and courage to face the world, because yes, there might be the predictable outcome. I might go the safe, or the 9 to 4 job, or the being an employee somewhere, and that's the predictable path. That's the one I can see. But if I have the courage and the resilience to see new things, if I have a setback or something doesn't work out, it's more like, what else? What's next? So it does not feel like the abyss. It feels more like, well, I don't know. Um, Everything can happen, and maybe also, if what other people consider as a terrible mistake or a setback, saying, I often say, well, that was interesting, It wasn't pleasant or it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
enjoyable, but it was interesting. So maybe I choose to say, well, I rather have an interesting life and accept that, yes, there will things where you fall flat on your belly or on your face or whatever, or a predictable life. And that for me, that would be the most terrifying thing. That boredom of exactly knowing what's waiting for me. Yeah, does that make sense? It was a bit of a backward answer to your question.
What are we losing there? Like on a predictable life, what do we lose when we live a life that's predictable?
Uh,
Because so many times you get this, people are so much drenched or drowned in comfort and the coziness and the safety that comes with a predictable life. What are we as humans? Because I remember when as a child, we all played as a child, right? We used to play with n number of things. When we create something out of thin air, that magic that comes out when we create something on our own, that I just don't want to name it happiness or bliss. It's a different feeling.
mm-hmm.
There's not a word, I guess. But uh, what can we say that what are the losses? Like what does a human lose when we lead that predictable life?
I think what it really is, it is like exactly that zest, that joyousness, that magic, that life energy, that freedom. But I really want to say that I do think it's not that people don't want to have a creative life. I feel very often it's the systems they're in or the situation they're in that is so overwhelming, puts so much pressure on them, is so hard, that aspect of themselves can't flourish. So
Hmm.
I do believe the more stressed people are, the more they have to worry about how to survive, how to feed their children, how to get through the day. Of course, there's less room to be playful and creative if you're under threat. So, and that we know that from studies of the brain chemicals. When we're in fight or flight mode, by definition, biologically, we have to narrow down at the solution in front of us. We cannot think about whether it's a real threat, a real tiger attacking us, or if it's an image. We're wired to survive. So I think the more people are under threat, whether it's real or maybe created by their own perception of things,
Mhm.
we are not creative. Creativity requires a bit of a safety and a bit of an openness and a bit of a
Hmm.
spaciousness to go like, well, I can actually take a minute to think. I can take a minute to allow my feelings to bubble up and feel into, oh, does it feel right or not? So I think it's a bit of a twofold thing. We can be more playful, let's say, if our base needs are covered.
I guess that's the you probably read the Maslow's law of
Yeah.
hierarchy, in which when our basic needs are met, it's only when then we can. But recently, like it's going the other way. We are living in a society where the
Mm.
creatives are rewarded more. The other way of looking at this is because every safety job or whatever the modern century has created is because somebody took that creative path
Yes.
somewhere. You might be working in a 9 to 5 job, but the owner or the CEO or whoever that runs that company, he took the risk. He was willing to lead that creative life. Correct. So it's a bit of a conundrum.
It's
Correct.
it. Our brains are lazy. I think it's habit
Uh-huh.
and training. Two things. Our brains are lazy, so that they
Mm-hmm.
unless you know the joy, or you have that, you know how good it can feel and how amazing things can happen if you are allowing that. Brains are initially lazy. They will always go for the first option. So um so that's why it's kind of, you need to almost train it a little bit. And then a lot of people also, I feel, they didn't get encouraged to be playful as adults. So usually at a certain
Mm-hmm.
age, people get shunned for being, you know, a bit goofy, or mucking around, or not taking things so serious. And and a lot of people I work with on a one-to-one level, they all have this moment when they did something really wonderful, very creative, and then got shamed or punished for it. And I think that very often stifles that, that side of allowing that
Mm.
to keep alive. And our society also does not support that adults are playful. It's still a little bit, oh God, there's something, they're crazy, or they're a bit lazy. Or, yes, we all, well, not all, but we know that, in the high productive or innovative, you need to be creative and playful. But the middle field of the world, it's almost still like, nah, that's nothing to take too serious. A bit of a misconception maybe about the power of allowing that part of yourself.
Hmm. It's about creating that solution, right? Because creativity is anything that is not of value to the society, it gets shunned off, or there is no incentive to create something. And art is something different, and even that also has a psychological value to human beings. So anything creative has some kind of value to humans in one way or the other. And I think when you really look at it, it's just that courage that's the missing piece to lead
Mm.
a creative life.
Maybe it's courage, maybe it's a little nudge, but maybe it's also another playful person who drags you along. Yeah. And maybe also understanding that creativity is, yes, we always think about art and literature, but as you said, every innovation, everyone who tinkered with things and came up with a better solution, that is creativity. It's also creative to kind of go, how do I want to go through my day? These are all, I think
Hmm.
sometimes people are not aware where they are creative and in which ways they can be creative.
Is there a way we can cultivate that, or guide people to know what their thing is?
Yes, of course. I mean, it's like a muscle, isn't it? Like, if you don't use it,
Hmm.
you lose it. So it's almost like you got to keep that quality alive a little bit, through things you do every day. And it might be, now you're kind of getting blurry on my computer, and it might be small things like allowing yourself to doodle or to create a small sculpture, or maybe when you cook, don't follow the recipe book, just um, fluff around with the ingredients you have.
Hmm. Hmm.
Movement is a very big thing, like free movement, so that we move the body. I'm the people I work with, they always laugh because when I get stuck at an idea, or when I write something and I can't, I have my brain jolts, then I always get up and do this crazy, I shake and I move, and you do that because then your brain gets like, it gets moved in different directions, and it helps.
Hmm.
So I think it's finding out, and again, it's experimenting, it's playing with what works. But on a baseline, if we get up, if we move, if we change our surrounding, if we move slightly different than we normally move, it will trigger that. And that can, support being creative. And then it's like a regular, you have your morning coffee, maybe you have your 10 minutes dancing in the living room, or inventing 20,000 beautiful
Oh.
names for your beloved one. I don't know, whatever, floats your boat. But have something every day that where you feel I'm bringing new things together. And then it gets easier.
Hmm. Hmm. What do you do in drama therapy? What is drama therapy? Like, I've never heard. Like, it's the first time.
I know we're still a little bit. I think I went to a drama conference like last year. I think we're about 5 to 6 thousand official drama therapists registered ones in the world. So we are a weird little bunch, but no, it's actually been around for about 50, 60, 70 years now, and it's using methods of drama and theater to help people to change or to work through their feelings. So it's like psychotherapy, but we're not talking. I mean, of course, we're talking too, but we also use movement, sound, images, metaphors to allow to tap into that our own innate healing abilities to work through stuff that maybe holds us back or makes our life more difficult.
What do you think an emotion is?
An emotion, well, that's a big.
Yes.
An emotion is literally whatever drives us to move and or behave in a certain
Mm-hmm.
way. And then you can get really
Mm-hmm.
specific in the neuroscience and say, oh, they're the five baseline emotions: fear, anger, joy, sadness, disgust. And then there are all the variants of the more defined emotions when we go on the emotional language, and being able to name whether we are joyous or just a little bit happy or bemused, or that really refinement of feelings in that way. So
It's because what happens is like what separate us, at least as humans, we have these complex emotions and they guide our life to the better, and leading that creative life sort of brings out that joy or that inner emotions as a child, and it gets you out of that survival mode. What happens? Do you know about the neurotransmitters or what's happening inside the brain when emotions flow? I'm pretty sure you might have studied.
it's kind of, yes, emotions are in a way that it's all, we have all these chemicals and whatever, and let's put it that way. Usually a feeling or whatever comes up. Let's say I get angry or triggered, and I feel anger, and if I can express it in a good way, or it can move through me, or the chemicals subside again. So let's say, I have a quarrel, and then in the first 20 minutes I'm really like this, but then if I allow it to pass through me, it subsides and come back to a homeostasis, to a middle ground, like the happy medium.
Hmm.
If I cannot express, or I have to, let's say, it's work and I have no way of expressing, or I might have to swallow it down, or it's too dangerous. Let's say I'm a small child and my family is violent, and I get angry. I can't, so I have to swallow it down. And those feelings often can get trapped, and those are the ones who create maybe difficulties or conflict later, because I get easily triggered. I'm too afraid to voice my opinions. Then those feelings can become problematic. Otherwise, we are happen and they flow through us. It's like when you watch a child
Mm-hmm. And
playing.
and
Yeah, it can get really, and then they do something and it fades. It has that, like they can flow. That's how I see it. That's my view. They just can flow through us. If I'm not holding on to, if I'm not having to be stuck, I can be really sad and I can cry. But if I can allow that in the moment, it can pass through me. I don't have to take it with me for like hours on end. Did that answer your
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
question, or did I?
And I'm guessing all these, yeah, right. Like when I was thinking, like all these suppressed emotions, drama therapy, and be it any therapy, it's a system to get this out, right? Because it's causing that negative feedback to all of us around.
Yeah. It's kind of to get it out, to find healing, or to find different ways of dealing with it, or to find if we look at art, so often art or music is a creative expression of a pain or a difficulty a person experienced. So it's almost
Mm.
changing, So you had something, all the songs about pain and love, like it's
It's
that
the
transition
emotion flowing out of you.
flowing out. So yes, you had a unpleasant feeling, but then you create something again. You create something beautiful with it. You create something that gives solace to another person who feels like understood because that person exactly sings about your pain you're feeling. So in that sense, I feel if we find a way out through those feelings, it can be actually really again a benefit for
How
other people.
right? How important is it for us humans that we connect with each other?
I
Because I
think
feel
that's
that's one. Yeah.
I think we're
Be-
wired for connection. We're made to connect. We
hmm.
we we are
Because
mammals. We need this.
hmm, because almost everything we do is incentivized for connection. Otherwise, we feel that existential angst. I guess as a philosopher, you might have felt that at point. Have you felt at any point that existential angst? What am I doing here?
Of course.
What is my purpose? Or
Yes, of course, I'm human. The moment when you're like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing here. Or that, is this the end of it? Or will I ever get through? Or what's the meaning of life? Or why am I here? But I do think like
mm-hmm.
in my early 20s, they felt harder than they are now. I guess with time, you become a bit more stoic about things, like I go like, yeah.
Used to.
I think everyone in that 20s, or like kind of it, because everything is the first. It's the first time you have your heart broken. It's the first time you might, fend for yourself somewhere. It's the first time you really consider, oh, I might die. What does that mean? Or so I think
Mm-hmm.
the teenage years are, or in the early 20s, it's so much harder because there's so much new stuff you have to kind of try to work out. And if you get older, you become a little bit more relaxed about things. I mean, in my experience, which is nice.
You can play more.
You can play more. Yeah, now I play more, and I don't. And you also don't care so much what other people think. You know, like when now someone says, "Oh, you're a bit of a nutter or a bit strange," I go like, "Well, I don't care. I literally, and that's, I think,
Yeah,
the freedom of enjoy my life, and I'm the one living it. So
you're right in that sense. Who's your favorite philosopher?
it's difficult to say. I do like
Or
the
let's say
Stoics.
two.
I do like the
Yeah.
Stoics because I think they have a good point. But I also, of course, being a German background, I like Wittgenstein and I like Nietzsche. But then I also like a couple of the more modern ones, like Sloterdijk or
Nietzsche was a
Jalom.
badass, wasn't he?
Yeah, yeah. I just, there's always something to
I
discover.
was scrolling and I found this from your website, or I didn't remember. Like it says that play takes 10 to 20 repetitions to learn, whereas if it's a habit, it takes 4,000. Let's
Yes.
talk about that.
Isn't that amazing? Because that's our biology. Like,
I was like mind blown.
I know. And then you go like, and then we force people to sit down, be really bored in school, and uh, go over and over again and not have the joy. So our brain learns quicker when we're having fun. Surprise, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the thing. So anything we learn in play, if it's fun, we remember way better because it's connected to all the pleasure and reward centers. Then also because it's often in play, we have a self motivation of exploration that also connects it to other parts in our brain. And the amazing thing is, like, if you ever watched um, dogs before they engage in a play fight, they do a little bow. So they do this little gesture which initiates the
Mm-hmm.
play sequence. And for example, when they get injured by accident or by each other, the pain threshold doesn't, that they don't feel the pain. Which, if they wouldn't have
Oh,
that little play
interesting.
initiation and they had the same bite, they would respond and feel the pain more. So there's no studies with humans if that's the case. But if I look at my own, I know when I do something in play and someone bumps into me, or even if it would be a little bit a hurtful sign, it doesn't cut so deep. So, and I think that's another
Hmm.
thing why we can recall, because we don't have the feeling we need to be on the watch out. But that's my personal theory. It hasn't been, or at least I'm not aware of any studies. But yeah, it's just if we have fun, everything gets easier. Even learning. If you learn um, anything, and a lot of cultures also teach their kids. It's a lot of play in teaching.
Hmm.
Even with farming or hunting, it's often turned into a game.
Right. What's in your playbook?
In my
I've
playbook,
read that you recently released your first book. Congratulations on that. And
thank you so much. It's literally a picture book for adults. And
uh-huh.
I actually wrote it for my clients, because they're always my adult clients, because they always said, "What do you mean by being playful? What am I supposed to do? Play cards?" I said, "No, that's a game. That's not playing." And so I came up with these invitations to play, and they're just little things you can do, like that might be playful. And some of them are really simple, like listening to the wind sound in the leaves, or curling up in the sunshine, yeah, and having a rest, which is also quite creative. So that's what the book is about, just bringing a bit of joy and happiness and ideas to people. And I had lots of fun creating it. I had a beautiful illustrator who designed the images, and we had so much fun in me describing, because some of them are a little bit quirky, what I see in my mind, because I have no talent for drawing or
Mm-hmm.
what I see in my mind, and then her finding the image and drawing it, which, yeah, was a really amazing process. Very enjoyable. Took forever, but was fun.
Be yes, being present in the moment gives you a different level of awareness, right? Like
Yeah.
listening to the radio, or that static noise, or just looking at the plant, and thinking deeply about stuff that brings about that creativity.
Mm.
Do you think like when you talk to your clients, they ask you how to play, like just sit and observe, and how important is that thinking part when it comes to creativity or playing around? Because when I sit idle, and if nothing really catches my attention, or if I'm not exploring my imagination, if it's not bursting out from the inside, there's pretty much nothing I can do to be playful.
Can I just say, I do believe
Sure.
being idle or a little bit bored is actually good sometimes. Sometimes we
Uh-huh.
need to
Uh-huh.
sit,
Uh-huh.
and because it's almost like shifting through and waiting for something to emerge. Sometimes I think that people are a little bit too
Mm-hmm.
busy
Mm-hmm.
to allow things to come up. And so I believe being idle is actually, I could give you another brain thing. There's a circuit in the brain that actually, when we're not focused, when we are idle and just, you know, sitting in the garden watching the clouds pass by and literally do nothing, the I now have a name, like the part in the brain actually restructures itself and is one which makes a lot of
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
connections. That's why I always say rest and having a break and literally not being busy or productive all the time is so important, because the brain then can reconfigure itself. There's nothing we can do. Um, it's a neural default network. I think that's the name for it. And it actually, as soon as we're idle
De-
or just
Default mode
restful,
network, is it that?
yeah, I think it's that one. And it needs that time where we do nothing to reshuffle itself, to allow us to see like the more
Mm-hmm.
subconscious
Mm-hmm.
connections. So, by all means, everyone should have an idle moment in the day,
Yeah,
in my opinion.
I had an expert on boredom. He had researched on over 30 years. He did a
Yeah,
PhD in boredom, and he kind of talked to me about the same thing. It's like wondrous things happen when you sit simply. And he told me that boredom is like rage spread thin. So it's not like a couch potato like feeling,
yeah,
but there is some kind of aggravation. You're bothered when you're bored, but having that phase for your mind where it can just wander off to infinity. I was talking about that
Oh,
imagination. I
I'm
did
gonna
not
I'm
mean that
gonna
we are
listen
like
to
we are
that.
like focus.
Yeah, I will listen to that because I find it
Yeah, you should
fascinating.
listen. It's there on it's there on my show. It's yes, research
Yeah.
is pretty much interesting. And yeah, so your brain switches off the default mode network. I think that's what he said. You break your your everyday
Mm.
connection on the brain, because when you it's like there is a code like neurons that fire together wire
Wired.
together. So
Yeah.
when yeah, so when you sit together and look at things and allow your brain to be at ease, that kind of creativity, like even I personally, like I do meditation. When I sit and meditate and just let my brain be, and I just sit there, be that observer, you can instantaneously see that switch in your
Mm.
thoughts, because you are otherwise I'm sitting here focusing my attention all
Yeah.
day, and there's a certain thought train that just flows out of me. But if I just sit, meditate, just be relaxed, let it all go out, and then watch my brain, what my brain is doing, what kind of thoughts are coming, it changes
Yeah.
drastically. And you to the point that, sometimes when you have dreams, like I recently had a dream 2 3 days before, and it was a horrible dream. But I was on a motorcycle with my best friend, and there was a bat flying in the middle of the day. It was like broad daylight, and I was on the motorcycle with my friend, and the bat was flying beside me on broad daylight. And that did not I did not think about it. It made no sense, but I did not think about that in my dream. And suddenly a tsunami came.
Oh,
So your brain, yeah, it was a nightmare. But I woke up from it. I thought, okay, my brain is making all these connections when I'm relaxed, because in not in a million years will I think of something like that imaginative thought
yeah. We
when
could go no
I'm
very
in
deep
my
and see what does it mean to you. But
when my attention is focused.
yeah.
Yeah. Unconscious is a really I really love to explore on the unconscious. I love to read about it. But yeah, that imagination, that combination of thoughts, perception, whatever, your brain acting in a creative way,
I
that
think
comes when you're relaxed.
yeah, and I think one thing you also said, which I really think is important, that it's allowing. So, allowing things to emerge, not having to know the outcome, not having to it doesn't always have to fit into your world. And I do believe for a lot of people in the education, this got trained out of them. If you go to school, there's a certain outcome. There is the questions you need to answer, and that's what you get the reward for. So the good grades or the job, or you be good at your job. You very rarely in our society get rewarded for um, well, I don't know what's going to happen. It might be a complete mess up. That kind of, but we don't really know. And even in just when you sit and meditate and allowing your thoughts to come up, allowing whatever wants to bubble up, that's a big, I think that's something people can do for themselves. Allowing not to have the
Hmm.
answer, allowing to go like, I have no idea how this turns out. uh, I I don't know where there's a bat, or the motorcycle, or that freedom of saying, well, it's there, it comes, and I don't need to know exactly what I'm going to do with it in the next 5 minutes. Whether that a little bit, that freedom, maybe that's also what you talked about before, allowing that choice and that a bit more spaciousness for ourselves, that we don't have to fit into a box, or you know be the good girl or the good man.
Do you think that in that sense society is killing creativity, or a person's chance to live a creative life?
Well, I think that yes, I was no, that there are a lot of situations where maybe out of not knowing, or different thoughts, sometimes gets squashed. I mean, people, when you just look at the education system, how many free time, children have lost for free play, like 10, 15 years ago, how much, kids had time to just unstructured free play, safe outside somewhere with a bunch of friends. Now often the school is so intense, and then there's afternoon programs, and then it might not be safe to be outside on the street, or they during the pandemic were not able to see other people. And it's so, I don't want to use the word kill, but I feel in our world it's often harder, and a lot of people don't have the chance, for that free unstructured play, or people meaning the best and then still pushing someone into a box.
That's another question that I had. When you are in that survival mode, when you are born, imagine that we are not been dealt a good hand.
Mm-hmm.
How do we still practice play at that point?
Start small, like with everything. Yeah, but it's almost like I worked in the
Mm-hmm.
prison for a while, and a lot of people who are incarcerated, they actually had terrible childhoods, and they never played. They didn't have the space to play. So we started with very small things, maybe some rhythmical stuff, and then small embodiment things. So play a superhero, which in the beginning, those guys, I'm not doing this, like, Ugh. But then when you kind of coax them into and say, come on, and just humor me, do it for me, just do me a favor. And then, because the joy is there. Once they're allowed to be someone, even if it just was for like 5 minutes, or, the time there, they could playful step into another way of living. And that actually then feeds back, because it allows you to think different, because you don't only see yourself as, that person who kind of messed up their life. You also see yourself as maybe the superhero who can, fly over the mountain and create something new. And that shift then leads to other things. And so I believe, no, I really do believe in the human essence, that we can heal ourselves, we can shift. And even if we had the horrible of circumstances, it still means you can develop and grow and blossom.
It's the love for the other human being that you give, right? I'm pretty sure you noticed this. What was your experience like working with the prisoners? Like, were you able to find any commonalities, or like
I
as a
loved
human
it.
being, you might have been able to?
you
Yeah,
know
please tell us that story.
because we're all human beings, yeah, and we can all find a common ground. And I always think we can condemn or reject an action or behavior, but it doesn't have to be the person.
Mm-hmm.
So I can still, and that's what I feel. We can treat everyone with respect and kindness and care, but I don't have to like what you're doing. And I don't have to accept that, I don't think breaking and entering, or arson, burn something up, is the right thing to do. So I can still say that's wrong in my book, and that's not okay. But it doesn't mean that the person behind is naturally evil or bad, in my worldview.
Yeah, it's all circumstances that leads us to our actions,
Yeah.
right? I'm sitting here having a podcast. You are a creative philosopher. You've been put at certain situations that made you think the way. You're right and wrong all depends on where you've been at, and all that you've been gone through.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that helping hand, and you've seen how much that hope you give to people, especially when they're down, it changes them.
Yes, that's what one hopes. You hope that having a laugh, or having someone believing that you can achieve or change, um, might just be what's giving them the little nudge along in their lives. And I guess no matter what we do, like you with your podcasts, or I think it comes from the deep. I want to make the world a little bit better with whatever I have to offer. Create a little bit more
Hmm.
magic or joy in the world. And If that works for someone, great.
Have you ever had a time when you lost hope in your life,
Oh, yes,
and you
definitely.
and how did you deal that? How did you deal that, like, as a life of a creative?
But I think, as I said, in 20s, or it was, it could knock, setbacks, or could knock me, and could get really, really depressed and down, and having that hopeless sense. And I think, yeah, it was almost like, where you go, think the world's gonna end, or but there was also this part which I don't like this. I don't believe it should be that way. Um, so, but yes, I definitely had a lot of moments in my life where I thought, oh my God, I don't know how to get through to tomorrow. There's this weird, it's a weird little story, but maybe I heard that as a child, and in that moment, it even helped me. So there are two mice, and they fall into a pot of milk, but they can't crawl out because it's really high and deep. And the one
Mm-hmm.
mouse goes like, oh my God, this is just, there's no way out. I'm just gonna let go and drown. So that mouse sinks to the bottom. And the other mouse goes like, I have no idea. This is a horrible situation, but I don't know what else to do. I'm just. So, and the poor little mouse, but always believes there must be something. So she keeps on moving and paddling. And through all the moving and paddling, she actually turns the milk into butter. And because the butter is hard, she could stand up and
But
slip out. And so, and I kind of, that's how I felt in like the really horrible moments in my life when I'm thinking I'm floating down to the abyss, as you mentioned before. It's just everything's dark and grey. And I thought, but now I am the little, I'm just, I keep paddling, and maybe, I don't know until I know. Now my paddling is very fast, but at that time, yeah. Yes. So I guess that's,
it's hope is a four-letter word. Yeah,
and
I
being
think it's that
realistic.
hope that drives all of us forward.
Yeah. And also being
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
realistic. I also think that hope that goes nowhere, I'm too stoic to that. Sometimes we're going to say, this situation is shit. Maybe this job is not the right job. Oops. I'm having to maybe plug the thing in because you're getting low energy. Sometimes you just need to be realistic and say, this is not right. I need to cut my losses. I need to, or this is the wrong person to be with, and not hoping that, you know what I mean, that times get better.
What is your typical day like?
Oh, I don't like typical days.
Oh,
Well,
so what do you do when you wake up? What's your first thought?
I'm a little bit like a bear. So I wake up and then I roll around in the bed and I'll be, and yeah. Now I have different days. Sometimes there's nothing. I have nothing planned, and so then I go, let's see what the day brings. And then, I have dates where I work one on one with people, so I know I'm gonna either have clients coming in or I work with them online. Some days I deliver a workshop, and then some days I just wait for things to happen.
Where can people find you about your work and all that you do to the world?
Well, you can find me under, if you list the webpage, drrussyaConnor.com.au. If they want to have a look at the little playbook, you can get that on Amazon or any other bookstop or Booktopia, wherever you buy your books.
Well, that was Dr. Russya Connor expressing her views on how to lead a creative life and all that comes in between. Hope you all enjoyed the show and see you on the next session of the Seeker's Mind Talks. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment. Thank you.